Welcome to Anews. I'm Mustafa Kemal and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. President Ahmed al-Shara arrived in Washington over the weekend for an official visit that will include talks with the United States President Donald Trump at the White House on Monday. The Turkish nation commemorates the 70th anniversary of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk's death on Monday as well.
Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara arrived in Washington over the weekend for an official visit that will include talks with United States President Donald Trump at the White House on Monday, marking the first visit by a Syrian head of state to the capital in decades. The visit follows Washington's decision last week to lift sanctions on al-Shara, a move that opened the door to direct high-level diplomatic engagement after months of quiet contact between the two sides. American officials say that the talks will focus on regional security and efforts to stabilize Syria after years of conflict, while Syrian officials say that al-Shara will also seek economic relief and international support for reconstruction. The White House has described the meeting as an opportunity to turn a page in bilateral relations, signaling a significant shift after years of estrangement. For Damascus, the visit is being framed as a milestone in restoring Syria's international standing, as al-Shara pursues a broader strategy to re-establish diplomatic ties and rebuild state institutions.
Well, we have so much in our plates to unfold, and joining us live from Ankara is Nilhan Açıkalın from Hacı Bayram Veli University. Mrs. Açıkalın, thank you so much for joining us and sparing your time here on Anews.
Thank you, Celine.
Well, let's talk about the Shara visit, White House, and which is symbolic shift for the new Syria. What does al-Shara's visit to Washington signify for U.S.-Syrian relations after years of hostility?
Thank you very much. Of course, it will be a very historic visit after the many years. First of all, it will be important for historically because it is one of the important visits of the President Shara after the 8th December revolution and the new Syrian government. And secondly, of course, after a long enduring of the Assad regime, it has been a long time that the two leaders of these two nations has been gathering together in a very mutual important visit. And of course, besides this, the historical importance, there are very important topics in the agenda for two leaders, especially security, integration of the SDG, and of course the economic relations, as well as the Israel and Syria relations in the upcoming days.
Well, let's talk about Syria cracking down on Daesh ahead of al-Shara's visit to White House as well. What message do you think is Syria trying to send to Washington by intensifying its operations against Daesh ahead of al-Shara's visit?
Well, the most expected message can be said because before this mutual visit, two leaders met twice in a different organization. And it's a clear sign that the Trump and the President Shara seems to be giving message that there will be a new Syria, and it will be a long time to have constructed the new Syria in terms of economically and politically. And it's also expected to see that the President Trump's support to the Syrian new government and of course the new order in the region could be expected as the most strongest message. Another message can be also considered in the economic relations because just for reminding, a few months ago, the American government decided to lift the sanction towards the Syria to relieve the economic reconstruction of the country. So it's also expected to see some very strong economic cooperation and also that kind of the positive message come out from the White House.
Well, let's talk about the fact that the visit of the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who has scheduled a surprise visit to the United States. How do you think that it is going to happen? Do you think that the timing of this visit is important now that the al-Shara is visiting the Washington, D.C. and Hakan Fidan is also going to visit the United States? Do we foresee anything about this situation as well?
Of course, the timing is very important. I think it's also important to see that Minister Hakan Fidan will be in Washington related with especially the security aspects of the Syria-United States relations and what will be agenda in the leaders summit. Of course, especially the integration of the SDG depend on the March agreement between the SDG and the Syrian government will be directly related with the Turkish foreign policy and the Turkish security policy in this region, as well as the Turkey's position related with the fighting against the terrorism. But also, it's also see that this visit of the Minister Hakan Fidan is very important regarding the Gaza ceasefire and how it will be conducted. The second phase of this ceasefire related with the especially determining of the which country will join the, of course, the ceasefire second part, and especially who will be in the ground in Gaza.
Well, lastly, what would you say about the overall external and internal politics between the two countries, as we are talking about Syria and United States and interference, and of course the relationship with Turkey as well, because Turkey has been initiating the cooperation with the new Syrian government of the world, and this includes United States as well. So what would you say about Turkey's role in such situation, and what would you foresee about the US-Syria relationship in the future?
Of course, Turkey will be the key actor between the Syria and United States relations, but not only these relations, but Turkey will play a key role in the key reconstruction of the Syria after the revolution. And also it should be reminded that the President Erdogan's leader diplomacy, bringing up the leaders summit is a visible and the realization of this process, because he is also very influential. He has been influential actor to lifting the section towards the Syria, and of course, talking with the President Trump through the leader diplomacy. And one more important thing that, of course, we have right now a very symbiotic relations with the Syria. Turkey is not only playing a key role for the Syria security, but Turkey is playing a key role in all aspects of the Syria and its development process. So in this respect, it can be said that within a very multidimensional relationship between the US and the Syria, Turkey has been keeping as the a key actor, and also Turkey will play a very leading role, of course, the development of the Syria in the next phase of the country.
Well, thank you so much for answering my questions and joining us here on 8 News. Soay Nilhan Açıkalın was joining us on the capital Ankara, Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you.
And what we have on the line is that before we continue, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan highlighted Turkey's growing role as a diplomatic mediator across multiple regions in crisis, stressing that Ankara is working to secure stability from the South Caucasus to Gaza and South Asia.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan spoke to journalists on his return flight from Azerbaijan, where he attended a ceremony in Baku marking the 5th anniversary of Azerbaijan's Victory Day. Erdogan said that the victory in Karabakh belonged not only to Azerbaijan but to the entire Turkic world, reaffirming the principle of one nation, two states.
First of all, the Karabakh victory is not only Azerbaijan's victory, but a victory for the entire Turkic world. With the spirit of one nation, two states, as I also expressed in my speech during the parade, we are continuing here a way of life that will sustain this understanding. On that day, we told both friends and foes, we stand with Azerbaijan to the very end. Even before the first step was taken, we declared that we were on Azerbaijan's side.
Touching on the ongoing situation in Gaza, Erdogan said that Turkey continues to coordinate efforts to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza, calling the situation there not only a matter of assistance but a matter of humanity.
We are making intensive efforts to deliver our nation's aid to our Palestinian brothers and sisters. In our contacts with our friends and brothers, we are discussing and developing plans related to this matter. The delivery of urgently needed supplies to Gaza is extremely important for us. This issue is not only about assistance, it is also a matter of humanity.
Turning to the conflict in Sudan, Erdogan expressed sorrow over the thousands of lives lost and millions displaced during nearly 2 years of fighting.
In Sudan, unfortunately, thousands of people have lost their lives over the past 2 years. Millions have been displaced and driven into exile. Children are struggling with hunger and disease. We hope for a resolution to the conflict in Sudan and for an end to the bloodshed between brothers. What is happening also deeply wounds the conscience of humanity. We believe this conflict must be brought to an end as soon as possible and that a solution must be found through dialogue.
On defense cooperation, Erdogan said that Turkey is working to finalize key agreements that could bring significant gains for the country's defense industry.
If we can finalize these agreements, it will lead to positive developments for our country. Alongside the steps we have taken in our defense industry, we will gain significant capabilities. The technical level talks and the progress to be made are important. And of course, there is also the matter of the F-16 jets and F-35 jets. In our recent discussions with United States President Trump regarding the F-35 program, we made promising advances. I hope that the commitments will be honored, and that we will, God willing, attain strong capabilities with the F-35 jets.
Concluding his remarks, Erdogan said that Turkey hopes to see calm restored and a sustainable peace achieved between Pakistan and Afghanistan, urging all parties to act with restraint.
Our current involvement in this process is also progressing in a positive direction. God willing, the outcome will be favorable. Most likely, within this week, our foreign minister, our defense minister, and our intelligence chief will make a trip to Pakistan as a trio. By discussing these issues there, God willing, they will work to bring the process that began in Doha to a conclusion in Ankara. We hope for the establishment of a lasting ceasefire and peace, and we continue to advise restraint to all parties.
And now we have another guest joining us live from Çankırı's Anews editor, Mustafa Kemal. Mustafa,
Good morning, Elif.
Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Çankırı. Well, we were talking about what is going on in the world, but this is an important day for Turkey as well, 87th anniversary of Ataturk's passing to eternity. So what would you say about this important day, about the effects of the most important Turkish leader, and also what happened in these 87 years that has come so far?
Elif, as you say, the Turkish nation is today commemorating 87th anniversary of Gazi Mustafa Kemal Ataturk's passing to eternity. And today we are remembering Gazi Mustafa Kemal Ataturk with respect. We know that Gazi Mustafa Kemal led Turkey's war of independence, and under the leadership of Ataturk, the Turkish nation fought against imperialist powers, and after Turkish nation's victory, a modern Republic of Turkey was established in 1923 by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk and his friends. And during his era, Turkey pursued a foreign policy based on peace at home, peace in the world. And today, Turkey is conducting same foreign policy, and we can clearly say that Ataturk's legacy is still alive in Turkey. And on this occasion, I would like to wish Allah's mercy upon all Turkish martyrs who lost their lives for Turkey's and Turkish nation's independence.
Well, in this important day, the commemorations are continuing, and President Erdogan has visited the mausoleum as well. And we know that the commemorations all over Turkey, it is important for the Turkish people. So what would you say about the environment and the souls and the feelings of the Turkish people during this important day? Of course, this is just him passing to the eternity, but he is someone who has done a lot for the Turkish nation. And how do you think that Turkish people are commemorating him and his legacy at this important day?
Yes, Elif, as you mentioned, today all Turkish civil and military leaders visited Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's mausoleum. In Turkish, we called it Ataturk, to pay their respects for Turkey's founder. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was among those officials visiting Ataturk's mausoleum. And President Erdogan, during his visit to Anıtkabir addressed the nation, and he said that Turkey will continue to follow Ataturk's legacy to realize a center of Turkey vision. We know that Turkish government is pursuing a foreign policy based on peace at home, peace in the world, and Turkey has been always calling for regional solutions for regional problems. And President Erdogan reiterated the Turkish government's determination to realize the center of Turkey vision. On the other hand, we know that Turkey is also pursuing a terror-free Turkey initiative, and personally, I think that terror-free Turkey initiative also means a terror-free region, and within this context, the Turkish government is taking concrete steps to realize both center of Turkey vision and terror-free Turkey initiative. And within this context, President Erdogan reiterated Turkey's determination to make Turkey stronger and greatest in world politics. I think that the Turkish government will continue to take tangible steps to realize the center of Turkey vision.
Well, as you have memorized it and you have put it on the table so quickly, so importantly, that it is a quite important day for Turkey, and also it is an important improvement that is happening in Turkey, in the new age of Turkey, as we have seen the terror-free Turkey, as you have mentioned, and the improvements that is in general that is happening in the internal and external politics as well. Speaking of which, for the legacies and everything, President Erdogan actually has spoken about the Karabakh victory is shared across the Turkic world. His statements were quite important, and the Karabakh history is actually important for the Turks in general as well, not just Azerbaijanis, but the legacy of the Turkish people. It was an important victory that Turkey has initiated a lot. So what would you say about this, and how do you foresee that President Erdogan's speeches, for example, that the one he's going to do today, and what would you say about this victory in general?
Yes, Elif, over the weekend, Azerbaijan celebrated its Victory Day, and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan paid an official visit to Azerbaijan to participate in this nation's Victory Day. On the other hand, we know that Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also joined both Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Azerbaijani leader Ilham Aliyev over the celebration, Victory celebration. We know that Azerbaijan initiated its military campaign against separatist Armenian forces in Karabakh to liberate the region from the Armenian occupation. And in 2023, we know that Azerbaijan successfully liberated Karabakh from the Armenian occupation. And during this process, Turkey reiterated its strong support for Azerbaijan's mission to liberate Karabakh from the Armenian occupation. And I think that Turkey's diplomatic and political support paved way for the liberation of Karabakh from the Armenian occupation. And over the weekend, President Erdogan attended a meeting with his Azerbaijani counterpart Ilham Aliyev and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. We know that Turkey and Azerbaijan have been enjoying close relationships in all fields, ranging from politics and economy to military and trade. And one nation, two states motto is defining the strategic cooperation between Turkey and Azerbaijan. On the other hand, we know that in August, both Azerbaijan and Armenia signed a peace deal in the United States. Personally, of course, I appreciate the peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia, but I don't like the venue for the signing ceremony of peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, because Turkey's diplomatic actions, I think, facilitated the liberation of Karabakh from the Armenian occupation. And Turkey has been always calling for geopolitical normalization in southern Caucasus. Within this context, both Azerbaijani and Armenian decision makers have been also nominating Donald Trump for Nobel Peace Prize. But personally, I think that if someone deserves to win a Nobel Peace Prize for the peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia, I think these people should be Turkish decision makers on the sidelines of this victory day. We know that President Erdogan reiterated Turkey's strong support for peace process in the region. On the other hand, we know that Turkey is pursuing peace between all nations in southern Caucasus. I think that Turkey's diplomatic actions will also pave the way for the peace process in the region.
Well, you have mentioned the importance of this peacemaking process. Let me ask you about your opinions on the visions that we have seen over the weekend between President Erdogan and President Aliyev, and they were really they were looking united, and we have seen them looking united over the years as well. We have seen that it being such a optics for the Turkic nations, it was a great optics, because that we were talking about a victory that has happened, and those two leaders were standing strong and tall about this victory. So what would you say about the new age of the Turkish nations coming together and actually proving that they are strong? What would you say about that?
Elif, we know that Turkey has been always calling for strong cooperation and collaboration among all Turkic states to deal with the common security challenges in shared geography. And over the weekend, we know that President Erdogan reaffirmed Turkey's strong support for all Turkic countries, political stability, economic prosperity, national security, and territorial integrity. Within this context, we know that Turkey has been also pursuing a foreign policy to realize a peace between Turkey and Armenia. We know that President Erdogan hosted Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan in Turkey's Istanbul to discuss the latest steps in terms of normalizing bilateral relationships between Turkey and Armenia. On the other hand, right now, Armenia is taking its own steps to normalize its diplomatic relationships with Turkey. We know that Armenia needs Turkey's help to secure its national security in the region. Right now, there is ongoing a peace process between Turkey and Armenia, and President Erdogan said that all regional stakeholders will be supposed to take Turkey's security demands into the consideration if they want to see long-standing peace, tranquility, stability, and security in the region. I think that Turkey is taking right steps to secure the economic prosperity and political stability of all Turkic nations. On the other hand, we know that except Turkey, no one is recognizing the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus as a state. Within this context, we know that Turkey has been always calling upon all Turkic states to recognize the legitimate rights of the Turkish Cypriot people living on the island. On the other hand, we know that Turkey has been always calling for two-state solution to the decades-old Cyprus issue. I hope that firstly Azerbaijan and then other Turkic states will be able to take steps with the aim of recognizing the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus as a state.
Well, those are important issues that we are probably going to talk about in the upcoming times as well. But thank you so much for pointing out that. Lastly, I want to ask you about Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan's scheduled surprise visit to the United States, and is coming so short after the Ahmed al-Shara's visit to Washington as well. How do you foresee the reason about this visit, and what do you think that it is going to happen? How do you evaluate the situation in the names of diplomacy?
Elif, we know that today the United States President Donald Trump is set to welcome Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara. We know that last December, geopolitical landscape totally changed in Syria as the country's longtime dictator Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia, and since then a new government in Damascus has been taking own steps to normalize normalize the political situation in the war-torn country. And in May, we know that on the sidelines of the Gulf Cooperation Council summit in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, Trump first time met with his Syrian counterpart, Ahmed al-Shara. And after this meeting, United States decided to lift sanctions on Syria, because we know that Syria desperately needs international help with the aim of rebuilding and reconstructing the war-torn country. And since the very beginning of the new era in Syria, Turkey has been always reaffirming its strong support for Syria's territorial integrity and political sovereignty. Within this context, Turkish decision makers have been in close contact with their Syrian counterparts to discuss the possible steps to ensure border security between Turkey and Syria, because we know that PKK terror groups, Syrian offshoot PYD, YPG, is still active in northern part of the country. During this process, we know that Turkish military forces conducted several counterterrorism operations to eliminate terror threat in the region. As we mentioned, Turkey has been pursuing a terror-free Turkey initiative, and this is also meaning that terror-free region. And within this context, Turkey has been expecting concrete steps from Syria and Iraq to deal with the common security challenges in shared geography. And today, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, as you also said, is traveling to United States to participate in the meeting between Turkish and Syrian decision makers. I think that Turkey has been also calling upon the United States to cut its ties with PKK terror group, Syrian offshoot PYD, YPG. Yes, in March, new Syrian government reached an agreement with PYD, YPG dominated Syrian Democratic Forces. United States is calling them SDF to hide their support for terrorist organization, because the United States is recognizing PKK as a terrorist group, but they are not recognizing SDF as a terrorist organization. Within this context, Turkey has been always calling for regional solutions for regional problems, and I think that if PYD, YPG tries to establish any separate political structure in northern part of Syria, I think that Turkey will not allow any fait accompli, and Turkish military forces will be compelled to pursue another counterterrorism operation with the aim of not only eliminating terror threat along Turkey and Syria borders, but also upholding Syrian rights.
Well, thank you so much, Mustafa, for joining us here on Anews and sparing your time to answer my questions here on Turkish diplomacy.
Thank you, Elif.
Well, with that, we have been talking about Ahmed al-Shara. Let's continue with that. The United Nations Security Council has voted to lift sanctions on Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, clearing the way for the landmark visit to Washington next week.
The United Nations Security Council voted on Thursday to lift sanctions on Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, clearing the way for his planned visit to Washington next week. The resolution also removed sanctions on Syrian Interior Minister Anews and passed with 14 votes in favor, while China abstained. The United States has pushed for months to ease sanctions, arguing that Syria's new leadership could help stabilize the country after more than a decade of conflict and political isolation.
Colleagues, with the adoption of this text, the Council is sending a strong political signal that recognizes Syria is in a new era since Assad and his associates were toppled in December 2024. There is a new Syrian government in place, led by President Ahmed al-Shara, that is working hard to fulfill its commitments on countering terrorism and narcotics, on eliminating any remnants of chemical weapons, and promoting regional security and stability, as well as an inclusive, Syrian-led and Syrian-owned political process.
United States President Donald Trump welcomed the move, saying that he believes Shara is making progress and noting that their upcoming White House meeting will focus on rebuilding Syria and improving regional security ties. Syria's ambassador to the United Nations welcomed the vote as a message of support for the country's recovery and said that Damascus is prepared to work with all partners on rebuilding efforts and restoring normal diplomatic relations.
إن سوريا الجديدة ستكون قصة نجاح ونموذجا مشرقا يثبت أن السبيل الأمثل في العلاقات الدولية هو الانخراط الإيجابي والتعاون البناء. وإن كان هناك مشاغل فإن سوريا على أتم الاستعداد لمعالجتها بنية صادقة عنوانها الاحترام المتبادل.
And now we're going to have another guest. James M. Dorsey is joining us here on Anews to answer my question about the latest situations that is unfolding in the international world at the moment. James, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, we have been talking about Ahmed al-Shara's visit to White House in symbolic shift for new Syria. So what is your thoughts about this Shara's visit to Washington signifying for U.S.-Syria relations after years of hostility?
Well, obviously, it's very significant. It's historic. It's historic in different ways. It's historic in terms of this being the first Syrian president to visit Washington. But it's also historic given Ahmed al-Shara's background and the fact that he has a jihadist history and yet has increasingly gotten Western endorsement since the overthrow of former President Bashar al-Assad. For Ahmed al-Shara, or for both sides, the stakes are high. For Ahmed al-Shara, the stakes are first and foremost economic. He needs assistance, he needs aid, he needs investment. Syria is a war-ravaged country after more than 10 years of civil strife. But on the other hand, there's probably a price that President Trump will want to extract. The price is twofold. The first part is relatively easy for Ahmed al-Shara, and that is participating in a coalition against the Islamic State or the remnants of the Islamic State, which are still powerful in Syria. More complicated are arrangements with Israel. Ahmed al-Shara has made very clear that he does not want conflict with Israel and that he's willing to come to security arrangements. But what Trump would like to see is far more. He would like to see Ahmed al-Shara joining the Abraham Accords, with other words, recognizing Israel and establishing diplomatic relations. And that's going to be very difficult, in part because of Gaza, of course, but also given the fact that Israel occupies not only lands it has moved into since the fall of Bashar al-Assad, but it occupies the Golan Heights, which Trump has recognized as part of Israel.
Well, let's talk about Syria cracking down on Daesh ahead of al-Shara's White House visit, as well as we have been talking about the optics. We have been talking about how it is a significant process, and you have said it is an historic moment. So what message do you think that is Syria trying to send Washington by intensifying its fights against Daesh ahead of al-Shara's visit, in your opinion?
I think that Ahmed al-Shara is sending the message that Syria is a moderate Arab state. With other words, it is no longer tied to Iran. It is no longer tied to groups like Hezbollah. It is interested in coming to arrangements with Israel. Those are the conditions on which it is willing to do so are essentially mainstream Arab. With other words, an end to the Gaza war, a credible and irrevocable pathway towards a independent Palestinian state, and in addition to that, security arrangements. Keep in mind that since Ahmed al-Shara's office, Israel has carried out hundreds of strikes in Syria, first and foremost to emasculate the Syrian military, but also to prevent the Syrian military from moving south to south of Damascus. Israel has sort of projected itself as the protector of Syrian minorities, the Druze in the south, on whose behalf it says it has intervened several times, but also of the Kurds and the Alawites. You recently had a meeting in Tel Aviv of Syrian minority representatives, most of them in exile, which included Alawites, Kurds, Druze, Yazidis, and others.
Well, James, thank you so much for answering my questions, and thank you so much joining us for here on Anews. This was an important situation, as you have put it so nicely, that this meeting is probably going to be something historic between United States and Syria, if not the Middle East and the West as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
In other words, we are going to talk about, lastly in our show today, the new vaccination campaign in Gaza is underway to reach young children who missed routine immunizations during the war, as doctors see rising risks of preventable diseases in overcrowded shelters.
A new vaccination campaign has begun in Gaza to protect around 40,000 children under the age of 3 from preventable diseases. The effort aims to restore routine immunizations that were severely disrupted during months of war, increasing the risk of outbreaks such as measles, polio, and meningitis. Medical teams say that priority is being given to children who have missed doses or have never been vaccinated due to displacement and the collapse of health services. A physician overseeing the campaign said that turnout was high on the first day, as families rushed to secure protection for their children.
طبعا احنا اليوم انطلقت حملة التطعيم، حملة التطعيم الاستدراكية اللي هي اساسا هي ضرورية لكل طفل كان متأخر او كان يعني بسبب ظروف النزوح ما تمكن انه ياخذ التطعيم او يتلقى التطعيمات، فاحنا ماشيين هذه التطعيمات يعني حسب الجدول المعد لهذا الطفل. في عندنا كان اقبال شديد باليوم الاول على حملة التطعيم.
The first phase of vaccinations will run from November 9 to 18 across temporary clinics and shelters. Parents say that living conditions in overcrowded tent camps, where clean water and sanitation are limited, make vaccinations essential to prevent disease spread.
جاي أطعم طفل إبرة الشهر، وبسبب الظروف اللي احنا عايشينها وكنت خايفة إني ما طعمش ابني، وإجيت هنا أطعم إبرة الشهر خوفا، يعني احنا عايشين في خيام ووضعنا الصحي بالمرة وفي حوالينا مجاري.
This is all of our show for today, but today is an important day, as we have spoken about with our guests also. It is the 10th of November, which is the Memorial Day for Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the father of Turks, as his surname goes in Turkish as well. This is the day that he passed away, but his legacy, his diplomacy, his politics, and all of the values that he has given to Turkish people amongst ourselves are going to be remembered every day, including today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Anews.